Hey guys, this is Pedro back with another interview covering the VCT during the off season. But for this occasion, I have here with me a head coach from one of the teams that will be taking part in VCT Americas 2025. You guys already know who he is just by looking at him, but just for the sake of reintroduction, fRoD, the head coach for MIBR, give me the chance for another conversation. This time talking about the team heading into 2025. And so, fRoD, thank you so much for making this happen, like I said before. And it's fair to say that quite a lot of things have happened to the MIBR camp since
Yeah.
our last conversation. So, but still, before getting into the meat of that topic, just want to ask you the usual opener. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling really good. We've been practicing for the last several weeks now. So we're just getting into the flow of everything. And I just feel really good. I mean, it's been quite an eventful off season, as you can imagine. And so many different things kind of changed back and forth. And we're just trying to do the very best we can as a team and as an org to put forth the best roster we could. So it's just really a really nice feeling to finally get everything announced and also been able to get back into the swing of practice because we didn't have such a great ending towards our last year, but we immediately kept on practicing. We didn't just go back to Brazil and kind of focus on the off season. We continued practicing and everything, so we really haven't taken that much time off. So it's just felt good to kind of get everything going, and now we have the roster going for next season all finalized up. So just feeling really good about all that.
Yeah, I remember when I, sent the request for a conversation and, fresh earlier on in the off season. I think at that point I can kind of say that the team was kind of still trying to like figure itself, solidify for 2025, and I had to wait until, soon after the announcement was made to finally ask you how that's been going. So, but still, like, there's no ignoring the fact that, MIBR brought in aspas, and that's obviously the first topic that I want to ask you about first and foremost. I mean, plenty of familiarity that there is between yourself and Aspas, given the previous stint in Loud in 2023 and a little bit in 2022, specifically in the end of that year. But
Mhm.
still, like, getting into that kind of point in contact when Aspas was, reported to be departing from Leviathan, and then at the same time, you guys were kind of rebuilding towards 2025. When did that kind of first point of contact happen between your camp and Aspas, and how did that kind of transpire as that negotiation continued?
I mean, when it comes to kind of what I was mentioning before about how we took the off season and took our poor season last year, we kind of just focused straight on our practice. So, the intention was to try and find ways to upgrade our roster if we can. And we were very content with the pieces. We were content with the way we were turning things around and showing a better performance even towards the end of the season. So that was the intention of going into it. Obviously, when Aspas, you hear rumors that he might be available and stuff, you're always going to be interested in something like that. So I think it's just kind of happened. It's just really no no real like timeline to go by and anything like that, or no real planning. It's Aspas. Like, of course, every team would want someone like that. It's just you just don't really know if it's available and he's attainable. And for us, I'm sure that's like a plan, like a backup plan for every organization. Like, hey, we have this thing, but like, what happens if some player of this caliber is available and we can make it happen? What do we do? So I think that's not necessarily how we went into it, but just something that everyone would pivot to in their right minds. And uh, yeah, it's Aspas. Like, he's the best player in the world. Like, this the way that he performs, and just having a good relationship with him and seeing how he's developed and everything. I think that. It's just great to work with him. And yeah, when Aspas, like, I guess he was obviously courted by many teams. And when we heard that he was available to us, we jumped all over that opportunity. It didn't happen until much later in the conversations, or like towards later in the off season. But, like I said, when we heard, we jumped and we went all in as best as we could.
I think the best way to say is like there was no hesitation, just kind of go into it without fully knowing, because I think that was kind of the mindset, right, getting into that kind of sweepstakes, because like as you said, every team had their chance to kind of, court Aspas, show them what they have, to offer. But kind of took a while for it to eventually reach your team, and so kind of two-parter. How long was it actually for aspas to actually like kind of look at MIBR as a potential candidate to then join, and also on top of that, no brainer, as it was, when the opportunity presented itself, you just went full go, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably more of a question for Aspas in the sense of like where he was at in that sense, because I don't think anyone really knew how they were in the Aspas sweepstakes. Maybe only the one or two rumored teams that already had him pretty much lined up, and things kind of fell through. So I think everyone, like I said, has some sort of plan in place to go after someone like that. And whenever they, everyone's always gonna let everybody know that they're interested. I just think that. With just how the stuff that's been happening with some of the other organizations or the other organization that got kicked out of the league and everything, just maybe they made it impossible for some other organizations to be interested just because they inflated the pricing and everything like that. So maybe he was never interested in anyone just because it was such a great deal elsewhere, and once he was able to open up his opportunities and look, I'm sure that we became a really good option. And just like I said, knowing Aspas, I know that he's a great player, and he also likes to be around people that he's familiar with. Of course, he wouldn't mind going to a different region and experiencing that. And it's always been rumored, about his interest in going to a place like China and stuff. But at the end of the day, he's also going to like to be around people that he's familiar with as well too. So I think that's where we were always kind of in the running, even though we never knew we were in the running.
Yeah. But it's kind of fair to say that, like, given your past familiarity with Aspas and how there's plenty of like reports regarding him possibly wanting to join forces with you, like in the Vietnam, you can kind of, if you don't want to elaborate at that, I understand, but just to kind of put it out there, how much of an effect did that past familiarity with Aspas play into just kind of him eventually joining into MIBR?
I mean, I think it plays a little bit of a role, to be honest, just because we do have a really good relationship. We speak the same kind of language when it comes to understanding the game and how we view the game. He understands how I work and how I like to do my things tactically, how I like to run a team and things like that. So I know that he likes that. And I know that he also appreciated the things that I was doing to try and help him on a personal level, like in the game, things like that, to develop his game a little bit and stuff. So, yeah, I think that of course plays a factor, but at the end of the day, I don't think it was like the end all be all. I mean, I think for him and a lot of guys, especially from Brazil, people could say, "Oh, Loud, they're great social media," but MIBR is a historic organization, so a lot of these guys, there's probably a big part of them wanting to be here because of the name and everything. And although we haven't been able to put our best foot forward in Valorant so far, results-wise, I think that people understand the direction of the organization, especially in multiple different games. And I think that people are starting to see how serious we're trying to take this thing. And, getting someone like Aspas and having him believe in our project and the organization is massive. Not just for me, for my relationship with him and everything, but also for the organization, because, like I said, it is a good place to be, and it's like somewhere that he wants to be at. So, for us, we're really happy about that.
Yeah, I think you kind of said it right there. Just kind of the project that you guys were looking at, that kind of added into just that past relationship that kind of made the difference between MIBR to kind of bring in Aspas. And it's an interesting system that the team has been able to form ahead of the 2025 season. I remember I talked to you at the end of the 2024 season, in that final interview at the end of the season in stage two, and you kind of made it a point to kind of focus, or you said that there is a clear focus on just kind of having the team rebuild, refine their skills, refine their camaraderie, their collective work, to then by the time 2025 arrives, you guys will be much better. And obviously, like from point A to point B being where we are at right now with a brand new team, there is a clear change to that system and the project that you guys are trying to build. Going from like the likes of Rich, Paula, Artazine, Liazzi, all that stuff, to now bringing in four new players, or bringing in three new players on top of Aspas. And so, how is that kind of how have you guys been able to just sort of rebuild from that previous roster up until this current point in time?
Yeah, I mean, when we talked last, we had the plans of going into the off season to. We didn't even really get a chance to make tryouts basically when we reformed our team before split two. So we wanted to take the off season to fine tune a couple of pieces, but also make sure that everyone's the right fit and everything, and try and improve here piece by piece where we can. A lot of rumors of good players becoming available, like even the Sadaks, the Lesses of the worlds. Like there's a lot of like a little bit of a shakeup that was going on in Brazil. So of course we have to eventually go in there looking like, okay, we have to see what's out there. But the goal was always to, uh, maintain and try and fine tune a couple little pieces. But when you get someone like Aspas that has such a unique skill set, and just trying to build a team around him and everything, it's kind of like you have to look at it from a different perspective, a different lens, and you can't just kind of keep with the previous project and the previous ideas. It's as much as Aspas is the best player in the world, you can't just like plug and play him somewhere. You kind of have to make sure the system, the environment, everything is ideal or catering to him in that way. And catering might be a bad word because you don't want it to sound like that, where you're like making all your decisions around him, but you're not really doing that. You just want to make sure that you in this case, it's more of like starting fresh, starting new, because this was never really something that we probably had in mind that could
Yeah.
possibly happen. So when it did become a reality, we had to go ahead and say, look, we're going to look at every option, look at every player, look at all the roles, personalities, and try and find exactly what fits best, to make this happen with Aspas. And of course, even the previous players were, options and things like that. But there's a lot of really good players that are available in Brazil because of this little shakeup that was going on. So, um, there's a lot of really good players out there that not enough opportunities, unfortunately.
I think it's fair to say that, with Aspas joining the team, you guys had to literally go from plan A or plan B to like literally plan D or plan E. Basically, you just had to rework everything, right then and there, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's just more of, you discuss these things and you talk about these options, but you never really like you can plan for them and stuff. But when they actually do happen, you have to look at every option. And yeah, it was just something that no matter, like I said, with the other, when you have a roster, and I think this would probably be the same for everyone, right? Like if you're going into your off season, maybe wanting to make one or two changes maximum, you kind of go into that with let's analyze, let's fine tune, and all that. But sometimes if you want to hit the reset button, or you get like this one player who can change the dynamic of the team for the better, of course, then you have to relook at everything about the team. And Aspas is one of those players, just like I'm sure some of the top 5, top 10 best players in the world are. They kind of need, or at least in my opinion, it's best to always like kind of build around them a little bit to make sure that they get the best out of themselves and the best out of each other too. Because I think that that's something that's going to happen. That it's like even for other players and stuff. Like if you play with Aspas, it's impossible to not play good when you have someone who is so good at the game. He's so passionate. He's so mature, and like he's such a professional. Like always saying the right things, and the way he handles himself in the game. Like from outsiders, he may kind of come off a little bit shy, but when he's on the team, he's very talkative. He knows exactly what to say, and um, tactically and everything like that too. So I think that with Aspas, especially as he's maturing and getting older and stuff, it's becoming more impressive to kind of see how he's evolving like that as a professional. And it's no wonder why he's the best. It's not just because he's talented and he has like this like blessing factor that he just gets all these kills that you're like, what the hell? But he really works hard, and he focuses a lot on all these little traits.
I got that vibe of maturity from Aspas when I had a chance to meet him in Los Angeles covering Stage 2 playoffs for Leviathan. That was the time in which Leviathan came out on top and won that domestic title. And just kind of, it's interesting just having to see him and see him grow as a player and not having to be, as you said, as shy as before. Now he's kind of becoming into his own man, and one that kind of like is in a position where he can like kind of alter the direction of a league, one might say, because it feels like in a lot of ways it can jump from like a team like Loud to Leviathan, and then those two teams would be very competitive and almost always also like competing for the domestic crown. My point being though is just this, having to bring in Aspas, back in another team, this time with yourself as the head coach, comparing that and having to had some time to just kind of take him in and observe him, um, during this preparation for 2025. How do you kind of compare that to the kind of man slash player that you saw out of him, in 2023 and 2022 when you guys were in Loud?
Yeah, I mean, I see him the same in a sense because we're very close and we always have good conversations. So whether we were on Loud or whether we were on different teams or on the same team again, like we always joked around, had a good time. I have a great relationship with him, his wife. So it's just always been like really cool. But the one thing that stands out is what I mentioned about that leadership stuff in a way. Like um, I've always known these things about him because he's expressed it in private and he has these conversations when he's confident like that. But now he's doing it more in a open environment, being more open, being more of available, accessible, like those words that like you usually associate with leaders and IGLs and things like that and coaches. You kind of see that more and that's something that for me being an older guy and trying to mentor some young guys, like that's the part that you really enjoy to see about this game when you see people develop into people that understand where they are, like Aspas, he's finally, or not finally now, but he's probably realized in the last couple of years, like how big of a person he is and how important he is to so many people out there across the world. So I think that with those responsibilities comes with a lot of maturity and everything that you kind of need to have. And I think he's been handling it very well. So that's also really nice to see. And he does it from an outsider's, like from a spectator's point of view. You can kind of start seeing that a little bit more, but then just being a part of him on a day-to-day basis, you kind of see it like tenfold, and it's just nice to see because it's like, yeah, it's not fake or anything like that. It's like he really is actually like growing into that kind of person, that leader and everything. And it's just great to see from a guy who's super talented, working on some of the things that he knows that he needs to improve on and everything. It's just really nice.
Yeah, it's a vast contrast to like what we've kind of seen on reports regarding like Aspas and and the way he kind of left Leviathan. Of course, you're not Aspas. I can't really ask you about what that situation was like, but when it comes to looking at those kinds of reports, there's kind of a perception as to like Aspas being like a very demanding player, and obviously from how you kind of been explaining it, that's obviously not the case. But when you kind of look at that situation and you kind of compare that to how it is right there, I want to ask you just sort of what do you think is the biggest misconception about like the kind of player Aspas is in terms of just being like a leader, having to ask for like a given team to support him in a way that he can perform at his very best. What do you think has been the mixed perceptions about that kind of thing in light of um how it was for him before he arrived at MIBR, and contrasting that to what you actually seen in person?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really follow the rumors like that too much. Obviously, I keep an eye on. It's hard not to see some of the things that people say, like some of the guys on Plat Chat saying he's a baiter. It's like he's not really a baiter. He's just playing really smart, and he doesn't want to go in when like abilities aren't ready, and he's not going to take a fight that's not in his favor and stuff. So I think there's a little part of that, but I mean, like I'll tell you right now, he'll never play Cypher for me. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a joke. So it's one of those things. Yeah, what people want to like the rumors that are out there about him. I will just say like are completely untrue and or never been part of what my experience has been like. And I'm a coach, so I'm on the ground floor. I deal with him on a day-to-day basis. I hang out with him more, than like his family. We talk all the time. We play games outside of practice. We have spend days off hanging out and doing things. Like never had an issue with Aspas about any of these things. So that's why I don't understand why people say that things are assumed they are. And I kind of experienced that a lot when I was a player too. I had a long career, but I didn't join many teams, so I didn't have experiences of knowing other players and other people because I kind of just kept to my own group of guys, my own team. That it's one of these things like that can happen too. Like even now at public, like never seen Aspas have an issue with his teammates or players or anything like that. So that's why I don't see when I see some of these things going on, just it's always fishy because it's not the Aspas I know and never seen or experienced anything like that.
Yeah, it's kind of the way you kind of compared, your career as a player and how Aspas is. It reminds me of this one quote that you gave to Thor in your reflection video, and how you kind of mentioned about how, looking at Aspas resembles a lot to how you were back in your CS days, your peak CS days, and it's very interesting to see that relation. Um and yeah, like now kind of want to pivot over to the rest of the team, because it kind of got my curiosity as to how this squad was formed on top of just bringing in Aspas, them being xenom, cortezia, and Noswer. Xenon and cortezia, according to VLR, they finished as the top rated players in split 2 for Brazilian challengers. And then Noswer, obviously competing in Fury, and was the IGO for that team, and also was a part of that Fury team like in 2022. Might be wrong on that. I can kind of fact check myself after this. But plenty of experience in addition to there being a lot of like new blood into the MIBR squad. And so how would you kind of, well, simple question,
Yeah, yeah.
what brought about Xenom, Cortezia, and Noswer?
Yeah, and this is not a shot at you because I know that you didn't say that. I think it was someone else had said that. It might have been Platchat or something like. I hope people don't think that my recruiting tactics are so simple as just going to VLR and sorting by rating. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's one of these things that it's like Cortezia has been someone that has been considered a top controller player for several years in Brazil. He was on Red Candids and stuff, but when you look at some of the players that have either been professional, like been in the franchise in Brazil in that role, like the Khalils, the RGL Meisters and stuff, uh, when you look at some of the players outside of those guys, you're looking at guys like Goo from Hero Base. You're looking at guys like Cortezia. Like these are some of the next up players, like the next up player, people that have proven themselves within the system. Guys like Xenom, same thing. He's proven himself not before. Like, yeah, his most recent thing was on the same team with Cortezia, and they just so happened to be the highest rated players. But these are people that we've had our eye on them for a long time. Even Cortezia was someone that we considered recruiting him before Split 2 last time. So, again, guys that we are very familiar with. NZR, experienced player, good IGL. He's very clutch on LAN, which has always kind of impressed me about him. His LAN performance has always been really solid. And he's worked with Aspas in the past too. So, there's a lot of familiarity there, but there's also a lot of, like, you kind of have to be in the scene to know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand why guys on Platchat and other places say these things because that's what it looks like. They're like, who are these guys? They go on VLR and they put 2 and 2 together, but it's really not that elementary, like if you're in Brazil, like that was part, like, that was more about on me in a sense. Like I've been in a Brazilian team for 2 seasons now, not even almost 2 years now. I had to get to know a lot of the tier 2 players, tier 3 players that are in the Brazilian scene because those guys are the future. Especially if I want to have a chance to be a coach here, I have to look for the next best talent, the next aspas, this and that. It's like we have our eyes on all these guys. So I think that, like I said, from an outsider's perspective, I understand, but there was also plenty of other names that may not have shown up, or that people that would have surprised others. And then Cortezia, and Xenom played the same role, but Cortezia had already played some Sentinel and Flex in the past, and he had already, even before we had considered him this year, he had already gone into this off season after I think Red Candidates didn't qualify to VCB like 3, 4, 5 months ago, that he had wanted to expand himself to a Sentinel player as well. So that thing, it just so happened that he was trying to add that to his repertoire as far as other roles that he understands how to play. So it kind of just worked out But yeah, there was plenty of other players that we were interested in, and yeah, I guess it's kind of coincidence how they were the highest 2 rated players, but that's not how we went about it, you know.
But it's a testament to just their individual process and just them kind of uh, having showing the fruits of their labor and just having to improve gradually over time to now, where people can look at a player like them and say, okay, yeah, I mean, they got highest rated, so they must be good, at the very least,
I mean,
what
the thing is that there's so many good players in Brazil, man. Like, you have guys that haven't had some other opportunities, guys like Gu, who are very good players and deserve an opportunity, that he was on hero base and stuff. And then you even have guys that were on our previous roster or on Loud or Furia's previous rosters, that these are all good players. Just because they didn't work on this team doesn't mean that these guys aren't bad players, Guys from our previous roster just now, guys like Paula, super talented, Mazin, very good IGL, Liazzi's a very good flex and a very good players. Like, these are all good players. It's just there's just only 3 teams right now in Brazil, and so there's only 15 positions to be professional. But trust me, like, there's like 40, 50 other really, really good players here. We haven't really, like, there's only like maybe like Sato and Lucky Show, like some of these 16-year-olds, Spiky Zine, that they're now some of the guys that are like you didn't know about them and they were so young and now they could be pro. But you're gonna get that all the time. And there's also players. It's not just the new guys that are there. A lot of the older players from Brazil are also pretty good. Like, even the guys that Loud had, like, people discount DG's in, but the guy's always been a monster. Even Vinny as well. Like, I haven't much experience with Vinny or know anything about him, but I've understood his career and even in other games. Like, these guys are FPS players, So yeah.
uh, and other people that kind of want to ask or kind of mention also in line with what you've been saying is like Tui's and Kawazin, because I remember, before the start of the 2023 season, there were questions about how they will fit into a world championship squad and not, being that they were rookies in the tier 1 scene. Obviously, we know how that turned out. Tui's and Kawazin ended up being like also arguably one of the best players in the not just Loud but also in VCT America. So I mean, a lot of Brazilian talent that we've been seeing, in the past and also even in the present. That said, I kind of want to ask you out of curiosity, regarding like other candidates besides xenom and cortezia. What were some other names that you were kind of looking at that might have filled the rest of the lineup in MBR?
I mean, I can't really give. It's hard to give that kind of answer like that, But just a lot of the guys that I had just mentioned, all those guys' names, even guys from our previous teams and everything, like not like our current roster before we made the total reset. We had considered a lot of players. We didn't have that much time because obviously this kind of fell in our lap so last minute that we had already a lot of players already made decisions. We kind of already made some decisions internally, and so there was a couple players that we may have thought about considering, but they had already, re-signed or been sold to a different team. So, just the timing of everything kind of allowed us to go this way. But like I said, we have our eye on a lot of the players that I've been mentioning throughout this interview, like all those guys, even guys like Gu and stuff. Like, these are all people that, we understand how good they are. We just unfortunately only have 5 spots,
I want to ask you more so also like on the lineup specifically, because this is one of the points that I brought up in one of my videos talking about MIBR earlier on in the offseason as to exactly like who's going to be in which role. I mean, besides Aspas and like Naswer, we kind of already know where they're going to be at. But, as you said, Xenom and Cortesia or mostly been controller players for the respective teams in Split 2. And you kind of already mentioned about how Cortesia is kind of looking into being a much more flex position. And then also Artezine, early on in 2024, he was a duelist, and he moved over to, I believe, Sentinel, a much more supportive role in Stage 2. So, yeah.
Yeah, with Art, he was a duelist, and that's what the original roster recruited him under. And we went with the direction of he was a good duelist. We thought he did a great job at kickoff, and he played really well against some teams there. It's just we wanted to try this one really hot talented player, Paula, and he was really good too. And Artezine, he's an FPS player. He understands how to play the role. So when he transitioned to Sentinel, he was one of the highest rated Sentinels, if not the highest rated one in Americas. He really, really impressed me with his understanding of the game and his concepts of FPS because, a Sentinel player is basically get right, like a hard lurker, an anchor, whatever, just like that play style. So, guys like Art, they understand like Coldzera, all these guys that play that lurker role, they understand how to kind of play that. In Art before, so Art was an initiator and a flex, and then he transitioned to duelist and got recruited. And then we transitioned him to Sentinel, and then he's back at the role that he was the most comfortable on, his original role, which is a flex. Mm-hmm. So he's going to basically play a little bit of everything. And, he's like a chameleon when it comes to that. He knows how to change his play all agents, play all roles. He's just super talented. We got to do a really good job of setting him up and putting him somewhere. But, to be honest, before aspas came in the picture, we made the change with Rich that you guys knew, that people knew about. Our goal was to recruit a Sentinel and to move Art to flex because, well, not really. We didn't make that move because of that, but it just so happened that Art could facilitate that role, and that was something that he's like, look, I could step up and do that. It's a role that I've had. Like, we didn't make the change because we wanted to put Art there. It's like we wanted to make the change regardless, and then it just so happened that Art could step up and play that role because he did it great. xenom, he's been a controller main. It's the role that he's most comfortable and plays the best at, so we'll keep him there. And like I mentioned about Cortezia, he had already wanted to change to the Sentinel role, so he'll play Sentinel for us. And he has already been practicing that role for the last 3 or 4 months anyways. So let's say that we had to start our team from scratch. Cortezia did a smart move, which is, have those 2 roles, because now you can consider him. Any team from Brazil will consider him for a controller or for a Sentinel role. And the roles aren't too different when it comes to like on defense, anchoring and things like that. So you can find it easy or easier for a controller to switch over to Sentinel, because the roles, like you'll see Tuis doing that as Sentinel. I'm sure he's going to be fantastic at that because it's the play style kind of fits similar within a team.
So xenom, controller, Artisan, Sentinel.
No, Artisan flex,
Artisan flex, Cortezia, Sentinel,
yeah.
aspas duelist, and then Nosware IGO/initiator.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That now we know the lineup that we're going to see for 2025. I want to ask you about Nosware as an IGO, and I kind of want to transition that to looking into the 2024 squad. Prior to these changes, because like obviously Nosware is going to join or going to replace Mazin as the IGO, and kind of want to ask you about what changes did you see in Nosware in his IGLing, over the years, from the time he was in Furia, the first stint, to Leviathan, and back to Furia, then now over to MIBR, and how does that kind of compare to what you saw out of Mazin as the IGO in that previous iteration of MIBR?
Well, I don't really know how Nosware was working on those previous teams, and I've only been working with him for these few weeks now, So even though I've known him for a little over a year and stuff, I've not really know how he works. And I guess IGLs, they like to work different and be different, like the way the captains like to command their ship, So it's been no problem. I thought Mazin was a fantastic IGL. I think there's nothing really to like compare the two in that sense, like, oh, which one's better or not. I know aspas is really familiar and was teammates with Nosware, and always wanted to play on the same team with him and stuff, so I think that was a big part of it. But I think Mazin's a fantastic IGL. I think NZR is also a fantastic IGL. Both guys have good experience. Both guys have played at a high level in other games before, even at this game too. So I think that you can't go wrong with either or in those situations. IGLs are hard to come by, and those 2 guys are very good IGLs. And we're just really lucky that both of those guys were able to work with us and things like that. So, there's nothing negative to say about that too. I really wish Mazin the best as well too, because like I said, he was understanding the game, and I had a great relationship with him. We worked very well together. And even though we didn't things were so different during split 1 that we didn't really have a proper opportunity to work so well together. And then as split 2 started, everything was great and we were working great together. It's just, it was so chaotic with the visas and everything that it was really hard to kind of really, me and him, work on those things together. And we really started to hit it off towards the end of the season, and in the off season, just kind of our approach. But things happen, and unfortunately it's just kind of the part of the business. But Mazin's a fantastic player, and also going back to NCR, like I didn't really have much experience with him prior to it, but again, whatever people say about him, about rumors, about attitude, whatever, like no problems with the guy. So Naswer is a great person. He's super professional. He understands how to talk to the players. We have great conversations with the team. So for me, it's a pleasure working with him. As same with Mazin too.
Now I kind of want to look back onto what it was in 2024, and I had the pleasure of talking to various people from MIBR over this past season, yourself included, and kind of now want to ask you now, as you guys now reflect on what it was back then and now at the same time moving forward to 2025. Obviously, there is a major difference between what we saw in MIBR at the start of the year, finishing just outside of the playoff picture in kickoff, to then having that kind of, fair to say, rough season in stage one and stage two, when with what you said about the visa issues and the team kind of not being able to be together for a long time, and then there's even seeing the arrival of Shazam in Paint for a little bit, and then with the possibility of you even playing.
I know.
I will say though, like, it should have been awesome to see you play, but at the same time tough for the team. But um, yeah, like still like just kind of balling it all together in a general sense. Looking at the difference between what it was in kickoff and the rest of the regular season, what do you think just prompted that shift from like the team being good to the team not being so good in that time?
Yeah, I mean, these are probably things that we had talked about during the season, because this is probably a popular question that was going on during the season, kind of like, why we decided to make the changes we decided to make. And I think a lot of it just boiled down to we just wanted to, hit the reset button. And we kind of were getting a little bit of, flashbacks of the past. And, the first franchising season was not good. And, it was one of these things that we just have so much high expectations, and the way that we were performing, it was not meeting, even we weren't even coming close. And where you have such a good performance at kickoff, you kind of sit there and wonder, like, is this our peak? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to, like, we can never settle for something like that. We have to try and pursue something better. And the timing of it all was, how we had mentioned in the past, like MIBR wanted to just do that right now, and boom, no problem. Like we'll go for it. Like we had their support, and they wanted to go ahead and reset, and I understood why, and we have to go for it. And MIBR has always been very transparent about everything, and you just gotta sometimes make those changes, man. And going into the season now, like I said, we wanted to make those changes, but we were very happy with our roster, even though, like I said, the visas and everything, we didn't perform too well. We were happy with that result, even though it wasn't like the outcome of the season. We were just happy with the players we were able to recruit, happy to bring some good players that we can build for the future. And obviously, like even someone like Artezine, him going into next year with our team, that's a testament to that recruiting part that we did, and other guys too could have probably been on the same team, just because they're very talented as well. Like I had mentioned about all the good players. So, we're very excited about the 2025 season.
I think another one thing that I forgot to mention in my previous question was sort of the change in coaching from bzkA being the head coach now being put onto you with that role. I kind of want to ask about how it was with him as the head coach, and kind of diving into that aspect. What do you think, just kind of looking back on it, what made it not work out in just having bzkA as the coach? And because at that time, start of the year, you were the assistant coach. So, I mean, you kind of understood how he was as a coach. So, what kind of, in a sense, made it not work out?
Simply put, it's the results. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it was anything about the process or the day to day. And I think that everyone was happy with it. And everyone, like, bzkA's a great professional. He works hard. He's a great coach. It's just at some point, if you have bad results, like, it is what it is. Like, I bet you if I go 0-10 next year with aspas in my pocket, I'll probably be gone here too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just one of those things that, like, coaches understand that uh it's a results-based industry. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all have our processes. It doesn't mean that one process is bad or one process is good or better than the other. At the end of the day, I could be the best coach, but if I have a year or 2 bad years or 3 bad years in a row, I'll be out of this business so fast. So at the end of the day, it's a results-based business. So I think that was probably a big factor. There was no issues with the process, with the way our team was going. I think you even saw a lot of Brazilian organizations and teams say the same thing, which is our process and our practice and our preparation is fantastic, but what the hell is going on when we get on stage? It's like, at that point, it's really hard to question coaches and stuff, and you can't even question the organization. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things that it's hard to even put your finger on to, like, what is actually the reason why we're losing. But at the end of the day, whether we found our reason or not, the results speak for themselves, and we had to make a change.
I mean, there's so many things that you can kind of pinpoint and say like, oh, this was the biggest thing that did not really work out with MIBR on top of just the topics that I've been mentioning so far in this conversation. But if you can kind of pinpoint as to one thing you feel the team could have done differently in 2024, what would that be and why?
I mean, I guess as cliche in some way as it sounds, is not go as hard as we did, because we, like, the amount of scrims and practices that we had was kind of a little bit absurd, in the sense, like, we, like, like, we got to do a better job of the ebbs and flows of our practice and our calendar. Like, there are some times that you can take it a little bit lighter, and sometimes that you got to go all in. But you can't be all in for 9-10 months out of the year. People are going to burn out. So I don't think that was the case, or even something that happened. But I just making sure that we have a little bit of a balance, and not, I'm talking about like work-life balance. Like, I'm a nerd, I'm gonna play the game too, but sometimes like, you don't want to make it feel like a job, is what I'm trying to get at. Like, you want to make sure that you understand this is still a hobby and a passion, and through that hobby and that love and that passion, you'll end up putting in more hours than if you felt like if it was a job. So it's just that feeling of, we got to bring the love and the joy back in this game. And maybe that's just more from a personal perspective, and not, like I said, not something that I thought went right or went wrong, just something that I feel like we need to understand. And it's more of like, every team is different, from the old MIBR to even my loud, to even last year's MIBR, to even next year's MIBR. One or two or even three roster changes the dynamic of a team so much. So you just got to get to learn them, and that's some of the mistake that I had to learn from. When people were saying some of the stuff wasn't true, I got removed from Loud. But I know one thing that I could learn from my removal over there was to make a better relationship with all the players, not just like Aspas or Sadak and stuff like that. Just make sure that you connect on a more personal level. So I think that we all can take some of those learning lessons too. And I dove into my work so much at Loud, I didn't take the time to really get to know some of the guys, and getting to know the guys, or not getting to know the guys, ended up potentially being part of my downfall, not my work. You know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things of understanding that sort of balance of when to go all in, when to kind of tone it back just a little bit, and create those personal relationships and things like that. So, yeah, longer answer than I wanted to on that, but just more of like that balance that you need to have.
Yeah, just kind of being in a way where the team can kind of, harmonize and just kind of work together, not just like in server, but also outside of the server, and just be on the same page is what I'm trying to get at. That's kind
Yeah,
of what
and
you're trying to
also
get at.
too, like, just to kind of give more context, like,
Mhm.
teams have different ways of operating, and they have to mold every way, like how you treat your off season, how you treat your boot camps, how you treat your tournaments, how you treat your off season, how you treat your between tournament seasons. You know what I'm saying? And you kind of have to treat them all and understand the same, and mold and adapt your way of working throughout all those modes. You can't just have one way that's going to work throughout everything, because there's just not enough time in the day to handle some of the same things that you would do if you're at champions and you play 3 different teams in a 4-day window. So it's just a lot of these things of understanding, like I said, just that flow that goes on. And you know we didn't go to any masters or champions like that, but you still have to understand that practice flows like that. You can't just be all in all year long, and find your moments to go hardcore for boot camp, and then also find your moments to kind of have like a normal 5 day a week, 7-8 hours. It can't just be like 6 days a week, 7 days a week, 10-12 hours a day. It's got to be a little bit of a balance.
In a way that, like, in that sense, from how you kind of been describing it, the team, last year's team, 2024 MIBR, kind of overworked themselves in order to just try to get to that level, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it came at their expense.
Yeah, and that's kind of what everyone in like all the other teams in Brazil were saying. In if you get through the translation of what they were saying, and not from what they were saying in Portuguese, but what they're saying is like, we worked hard, we reviewed VODs, we did everything we could, and we just couldn't translate it to the stage. It's like everyone was trying to find solutions, and everyone was so focused on the practice and the preparation as to being the focus. And it's like that didn't really help. And some teams it can help, some teams it can hurt, but it's that balance that you can't just put it all on practice. And we were like I bet you that would be the same that every other team, and even guys like Fiore were saying that too, that they were killing themselves, how much ranked and how much stuff they were playing, and it's like sometimes maybe if they would have taken that night off or something, maybe like that little mental reset would have ended up being better than just continuing to push and push and push.
Mhm. And definitely some good lessons that you've learned from this past season with MIBR, and putting that to making corrections for 2025 and now getting into 2025. I mean, obviously, like, in relation to how the public kind of perceives this team, adding in aspas is going to put you guys at a much higher position in terms of like power rankings and the like in VCT Americas, and so that brings about obviously pressure and expectations for the team. As someone that has already won champions Americas, you're no stranger to that, and in addition to competition in CS, you're no stranger to that. I'm sure aspas is no stranger to that. I'm sure Nosware is no stranger to that. But as a collective for MIBR, do you feel that weight of expectations, not just for yourself but also for the rest of the team, in having to perform with aspas and reach masters and champions for next year?
No, I don't think that anyone has that pressure. We put enough of that on ourselves individually already. We have those expectations of making it. We have those expectations of winning a champions. It's just whether we're gonna be able to do it or not. I think everyone kind of goes into the mindset of that. I don't think that, like, of course, in some way, like you're gonna have more eyeballs. Like, we're gonna have more viewers now, but I don't think that changes for anything. And a lot of these players, especially guys like Cortezia, xenom, even Art, now that he's getting another crack at the franchising and stuff, it's like these guys have not been professionals that long in their careers. This is all that they've dreamed for. It's like whether Aspas is on the team or not, they're going to give 100%. So of course it helps so much. Aspas is definitely like the best, and he's always going to like make those guys play better. But these other guys are going to come in with they're going to have their own pressure from their families, and they're going to also want to perform and give their life because this has been their dream. So I think you're going to see that, we're going to come in very loose and not have this kind of pressure, because guys like Aspas, even guys like myself that have had success in gaming in different tournaments, the one thing that we have is kind of a short-term memory with those successes. So we understand what has helped us get to that point, but we don't let those things, like those successes, be how we approach like our next goal or whatever. We understand there's a process and an expectation, and it's always about the next one. So I think that even guys like Aspas, even myself, we've had those successful moments. It's like that's in the past. You kind of just focus on the next one. One day down the line, we can sit back and look at it, but until you're done, you got to keep focused on the next one. And I think that's kind of our mindset, is like, we're focused so hard on kickoff, and we're focused on our next tournament. We're actually focused really much on the next tournaments that we have, even like an off-season tournament and everything. Like, we're going to try and give our maximum when it comes to that and try with everything, because I for damn sure, like, I'm a coach, so it's so hard. It's only so much I can impact when it comes to that, but I for damn sure know that all the guys, and especially Aspas, don't want to lose not one single game that he plays. So it's kind of like, he's going to come into this with the same exact mindset he's had every year. He's going to have a ton of pressure on him because he knows, but it's like a lot of these guys already understand how to deal with these pressures in these moments. So I think it's just it's another day in the office in that way. Just kind of like we understand that there's that pressure. We just find our own ways to ignore it and move on.
Got a few more questions to ask, but then I'll wrap it up. I know you already mentioned about expectations, but I kind of want to ask you in a different way, on top of what I asked you in the previous question. What do you see as, like, obviously there's a ceiling, but what do you see as like the floor for this team?
I would say that it would be a really really disappointing year if we can't make it to one tournament somehow. Like obviously we would want to make the playoffs of every tournament that we compete in, which would mean that if we make playoffs in the kickoff or in the splits, that we're going to be going to a Masters, and if we want to go to a Masters, so for us, we got to qualify to an international. We want to take this MIBR brand, like in the VALORANT team, like to a different location, and show what we can do on a global stage. We've only been limited to Brazil back then when we were playing in the Brazilian leagues, and the last couple of years we've only played in Americas. So and kickoff, which was or lock in, which was 1BO3 or 1BO, yeah, one game that they played. So I think we want to showcase what we have, and so that's my goal. Is like my floor. Like, of course, our goal is to get top three, to get a trophy, whether it's a Masters or a Champions. But I think as a floor or a minimum expectation is we just got to get to a Masters or Champions. Like we got to get on a flight to leave America somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be the main focus for this MIBR squad. One more question, more so just now focusing on the changes to the format for 2025 schedule, because I remember this was one topic that we touched upon heavily in our last conversation. So I just want to give you your thought. I just want to ask you for your thoughts on just how are you feeling? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you like in between?
I mean, I honestly like it because I think that at the end of the day, if the players want this, then we should try and help them out. I how do I say this? Like I competed for so long and I didn't have these kinds of breaks. We didn't have these formal off seasons, so I'm kind of used to in my mind. But I understand that things have changed and times have changed, so I have no problem with giving more breaks and more time between tournaments. I think that when we were with Loud and we were going to every tournament, like, yeah, we could use a little, like an extra week or two, because it really is draining. But at the same time, like, if I'm flying across the country and I have no breaks, that means that I'm winning and I'm being successful, right? Like, that's a good problem to have. But when we were at lock-in, we were there for a whole month because we arrived there, we played the group, then we had to wait for the other group, and then we made it to the grand finals. Like, that's a good problem to have. Like, I understand from the perspective of the players that competed at every tournament. A lot of guys didn't complain. I think this came more from EMEA about the calendars and things like that. It's more of like, man, when you're the best and you're competing all these tournaments, like, unfortunately, like that's how it is. There's only so many months and breaks that Riot can fit in between to kind of buy time. And at the end of the day, Riot wants matches to be played. You get me? Like, they want, like, the fans want to see matches. Of course, we want to have different matches, different tournaments, different formats and stuff. But we got to play some more games. That's why for me, it's like I'm okay with having more time off too. But I'm also not okay with just playing 4 or 5 games in a group and then you're done. So while I think that we could have more breaks, I also think that we could play a lot more as well, especially like our regular season.
Yeah, and at the very least, hopefully, we can see a much better version of MIBR in relation to what we've seen in the past 2 years, including this past season. And so that's it. I'm going to wrap up this interview. fRoD, can't thank you enough for making this happen. Talk to me about various topics relating to your team. I can't wait to talk to you again once the regular season does kick off, pun intended. And yeah, definitely be looking forward to our next conversation.
Appreciate you, Pedro. Have a great day, man.